Hey everybody, Mike with Games Play Badly, and on this episode of Session Zero, I have James. I had him on last year about his martial arts game, which was called Fight to Survive, Martial Arts with Heart. It was so popular, he came out with a solo version of the game. If you like martial arts and you like tabletop role-playing games, take a look at this one. That interview starts now. Hey James, how are you?
Hi, I'm great.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Your beard has grown mightier since last week.
It's grown into different colors.
Yes. Yeah.
I dyed it for a Halloween outfit, and rather than using the stuff that will fade and I sweat profusely sometimes and drip, I decided to use a real dye. And so it's growing back out again. So I have a two-tone beard.
That's wonderful. My beard is also two-toned, but the other tone is gray.
Yeah, right. I remember those days. I remember those days where I had some color in there. So anyway, the last time we had you on was, I think it was last year for your game Fight to Survive. And you are around the corner releasing something else that is along the same lines. Why don't you tell me all about that?
Yeah, last year we were on for a Fight to Survive role-playing martial arts meets heart, a diceless multi-generational martial arts tabletop role-playing game. And this year we're here for the solo sister version of that game, Solo Martial Blues. Solo Martial Blues is a one-player tabletop role-playing game, for one lonely fighter to hit the streets by themselves. This time you're fighting alone. So it's going to be a 200-page-ish, gorgeous kind of solo game that people can follow along with at home. See, when I was doing, and I don't mean to hijack your question.
Sure,
when I was doing Fight to Survive, the number one question I got was, "Oh, but is there a solo version?"
Really?
Yeah, that was the one I got more than anything. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll put it in as a stretch goal, whatever. I wasn't really thinking about it. Little did I know that it would be a huge design challenge to try and make it a solo version. So the 50-page solo that I promised Kickstarter backers ballooned into a 124-page book. And then a full book, and then I gave it to them, and I was like, well, I can keep going on this. I can keep going on this. I can expand this. I can make this. It's complete now, but I can make it even better, and then release it as something of its own. So it started light as an overpromise and an over-delivery, and now it is its own crowdfunding effort. It's coming to the platform Crowdfunder on February 1st, 2024. For funding, it'll be funding throughout the month and closing on March 1st. And we have a modest goal, $3,000. I just want to get it funded to get it out there because it's largely done, right? I just need to do I just need to lay out the last 30, 40 pages. And then if there's more money, then I get to do more art. Because I've got a fantastic artist in Stephen Wu, who did some of the interior art for Fight to Survive, but he has too many credits to list. But my personal favorite is, and I got to butcher the name, but Jingashi, Blood at the Banquet Hall, he did interior art for that. So he's phenomenal. So I want to shamelessly get him to draw martial arts dudes as much as possible. So the more money we get, the money's going to go towards an editor, because I need editing sometimes, and the art and a sensitivity reader, and then it goes out the door and everybody can enjoy it.
Yeah, you sent me an advanced copy. The artwork and it's phenomenal. It looks virtually complete, and it is playable in the state that you sent it to me. But it's for my eyes only, mine.
Well, I'll be honest with you. What you got was almost the same as what the Kickstarter backers got. They just had an old cover, and they had a little, dedication on the inside. But otherwise, that's the state it was in. So yeah, it is finished and it is playable and it does work and it's super fun already. But let's be more serious. Let's take it up a notch. Let's advance it in belt so that it's even more spiffy and get it out there.
Right, exactly. And reading through it, it really, and we mentioned this or I mentioned this in the pre-interview, kind of reminds me of Choose Your Own Adventure on steroids because the actual adventures in the book.
Yeah, I mean, here's where it's coming from. We're living in a really exciting time for tabletop role playing games
Mhm.
because there's lots of new stuff happening all the time. There's never been more stuff, right? Ever. And we're also living in a particularly interesting time for solo games because a lot of that mechanical territory is undiscovered.
Mhm.
Where there's like a little bit of the map has been discovered and all the rest of it is just fog of war.
Mhm.
And there are some pretty great solo games that have a lot of following, games like Iron Sword or 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, but an awful lot of them deal with journaling or story prompts. I'm not that creative when I'm playing. And when you say, oh, the story prompt is somebody betrays you, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know who. My cats, yeah, maybe. So I find it hard to engage in that material. Neither did I, but I understand lots of people who really, really love it, and that's great.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. But just for me, it's hard. I also didn't want to go a straight up choose your own adventure because there's not a lot of room for creativity in that.
Mhm.
It's very rigid kind of structure. And a lot of the choices that you make aren't as impacting as you want them to be because it's just leading to an end.
Mhm.
So I wanted to craft something where it was somewhere between those two ideas. There was enough developed of what you were doing step to step, kind of like a choose your own adventure, that it would springboard players off into their own imaginations. Just small prompts, small story prompts, and decisions that lead you from page to page. But the majority of the game is still happening in your imagination and is still happening by your own prompting. And it, so it isn't story prompt, but everything in it should springboard your sense of creativity about how you feel about things that are going on.
Mhm.
So, for instance, like one of the things that happens in the game is it you're put in charge of a grocery store, which just becomes a hotbed for reasons why people want to come in and rob it. They have to get into fights with them and
Right.
things like that, right? But you're given opportunity to reflect on what that grocery store means, and it has a comfort number that influences your character and how much your character can reduce hardship, just like in the main game Fight to Survive. And you're often called on to reflect on your workday and to reflect on uh, what the comfort means to you in order to mechanically have that hardship reduced. So there's kind of a call and response going on with your own imagination. There's
Mhm.
just enough prompt for you to understand your setting and your environment and your characters, these really interesting, lively, weird characters and situations. But there's also enough going on that makes you reflect on what it is, why it's important. And of course, the martial arts fights, just like in Fight to Survive, you're not guaranteed to win them. You could come away busted and bruised and beat up and in a horrible state, or you could decide to quit the game. It's a tough game. Solo Martial Blues. It's not easy. It's kind of like an old. Well, I was running through it the first dozen times. I was like, oh, this reminds me of trying to beat the first level in Contra or something. It's pretty rigid, and you have to start thinking pretty critically of like, you can't do it all. You can't do it all. You have to make choices.
Right.
They're tough choices. My own book is stressing me out. So it's supposed to be one of those fun stress games
Mhm.
where you're in a system of economic oppression and it sucks and you gotta get into fights and oh no, you don't want to, and oh, if
Right.
only you could have a peaceful life, but you're still playing this martial arts game.
Yeah,
So
it's it gives me Rumble in the Bronx
yeah,
type
yeah,
type feeling. It's like you're trying to do the right thing, but you're battling those who want to do the ill. And why are you protecting this workplace and all those? Because your previous game was martial arts with heart, and I see you've carried that over into the solo game. So it is something that's going to invoke emotion. It's going to be something that makes you reflect on why you do certain things and why you're doing them. Did I repeat myself twice? I think I probably did.
yeah. No, I
Uh,
get it. I get it.
but at the end of the day, it's going to elicit some sort of emotional response that catapults the gameplay into whatever situation, whether it be a physical fight or how you're going to react to the world in general. So
Well,
that's
flat out, why you're fighting is more important than fighting.
right,
If you
right,
wanted to do a combat simulator, those are easy to do, right? You can do those with yourself or with another person, or you can just sit and play all the fights, I guess. But like, you need the heart, you need that context. Otherwise, why do you care? You
right,
got to care. You got to fight for what you believe in, and you got to believe in something.
right.
So,
And you're not going to fall into cheap hooks and tropes. You're gonna kind of suss out exactly
well,
what's
my
going
hooks are
on.
pretty cheap. But
I was trying to give you some credit.
no, but I mean, it also, you want to get at the heart of the genre, right?
Sure.
I want to emulate things like, I don't know, The Outsiders, Stay Golden, Pony Boy. Like, is it a little bit cheesy? Yeah, it's a little bit cheesy, but
Yeah.
it's got a lot of heart. It's got a lot of feeling to it, and it feels meaningful. I don't know if you remember The Outsiders. I really.
Well, so this all was spurred out of a Kickstarter stretch goal that kind of went above and beyond what you originally expected and became something that was requested. And so now it's going to be its own individual game that's been expanded. That 200 pages, that's a whole bunch. So, I mean, how long did it take you to kind of put all this together and figure out the mechanics?
I mean, I put it together, figured out the mechanics, and wrote it in about 6 months, but that's not very telling because I was doing a lot of other things during that time too. We released the combat cards, which is a kind of a play aid for Fight to Survive in
Hmm.
the same amount of time. And there's been a lot of other developments at radiojamesgames. There's like 6 more games planned for 2024. So
Ooh.
there's a lot going on, but Solo Martial Blues is what's going to kick off the beginning of the year.
Well, stay tuned to this channel because I'm going to have all the interviews for all those games.
Oh, oh no.
Aren't I?
Yeah, no, I think I have enough to say about all of them. Yeah, yeah.
No, no, no. Don't give anything away. I want everyone to be surprised. If, as a matter of fact, I will ask for one little bit of one of your favorite projects that you're working on for 2024.
Okay, you're hearing about this first. Like, you're the first person to get any news on it. Really, I think I had a name drop in a newsletter, but I'm working on a game called the Psychic Danger Society,
Mm.
which is about. I grew up in a small town, and the small town was run by middle-aged and little old ladies, right? Between the library board and the Friends of the Library and the CWL and the IODE and the 4-H club and the whatever else, like anything that happened in the town was like the same group of like, I don't know, 30 old ladies organizing parades and shows, fairs and whatever else. And they were really like, they were the power. They were absolutely the power behind this small town growing up. And nobody celebrates that. So I really wanted to make a game, and it's called the Psychic Danger Society, about how great these people were as a movement and are as a social force in small towns. Just the trick is I give them all psychic powers. So what if all of these ladies had psychic powers, and so they could head off all the dangers happening in their town? What would they do? Well, obviously they would prevent any danger, period, from happening in their town. So the mechanical gimmick of it is that you roll your dice at the beginning of the session as your prediction dice, and then those are the dice that you use during the game. Those are the
Oh,
results.
funny.
Because you're psychic,
Sure.
predicting, right?
Yeah.
And then
I mean, it's a Rotary Club on steroids.
yes, exactly. So like, what if your Rotary Club had psychic powers and was determined to protect your small town?
Absolutely.
That's exactly it, right? And I feel like I don't want to be old man yells at cloud, but there is a concern with internet culture that we're losing community organization.
Hmm.
And certainly 30 years ago, people my age would be very involved in those organizations that
Mhm.
aren't necessarily now. And I'm not saying old times good, good times bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. We have wonderful new things we do all the time, but I'm a big proponent of community, and I love community organizations. I love it when people organize behind really wonderful things like literacy and like all the wonderful things people could organize around.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to make a short game to celebrate that. 36 pages, and it'll be out in Q1 2024. I've got a great artist making lovely drawings of little old ladies to put in there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So very different content from like martial art, beat down, drudgery, play in failure kind of stuff.
But I would say, and I feel, I not knowing what else is projected, I feel like everything that you do is going to have some sort of emotional thread that's going to be running through them. So when you look at that neighborhood feel and the community organizations that make a difference in the community, right, I think that's emotion in itself. I mean, it's not longing for, it's appreciating what you have. So I think that's a great idea. I love pre-rolling the dice, and that's kind of what you have to deal with everything that comes up in front of you.
Yeah, it's a shtick, certainly, but when you meet each night, like in game, you get to roll those dice again. So it's not just, but it's stressful. It's stressful because then it becomes a resource management. You're like, oh, well, I've got an 8, and I got a 6, and I've got a 3, and I don't know what to use that 3 on. It's going to be bad. And I want to keep that 8.
Sure.
But you're right. Like the emotional content is what I care about in games, period. And every game that I have is going to have some, how do I put this? There's lots of great combat games out there, and I don't believe anybody has any bad, wrong fun. But what I'm interested in are things with emotional content. And I think that I get excited about how much there is still to do in tabletop role-playing games and how many cool things are still untouched in terms of ideas. And I just can't get them in fast enough.
Yeah. That's something that, that first year of the show, I had 50 or so, some odd interviews with people from all over the world with all their various games. Second year, I didn't do quite as many because we were kind of ramping up for Gen Con and a lot of planning for that. But there's never a lacking of new games coming out or ways to play, genres. All sorts of different things are always out there. So that's the reason I love to talk to people who develop games like you, because you come up with the most creative ideas, including the elderly with superpowers.
The Psychic Danger Society, yes.
Yeah, right.
And
I feel like there's going to be some sort of crocheted element in there with like their symbol on it.
Oh, I really want some crochet now. Made a really good point. Crochet is a really good point.
Or macrame.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that kind of thing. Listen, I'm going to get on my soapbox. Will you let me get on my soapbox a little bit? There's no such thing as oversaturation in tabletop role-playing games.
Mm-hmm.
And some people say, oh, you can't do it because you can't compete in the market because there's just too many games. Garbage. Nobody has ever said there's too many movies coming out. I can't watch the one.
That's a good point.
Nobody has ever said there's too many novels being published, right? You just find more things that you care about when there's more things being published, or there's more movies coming out, or there's more, what do people think when there's too many movies coming out? They think, oh, gee, there's a lot of movies that I'm interested in this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? I mean, there are enough folks out there who are playing games and to fulfill a niche for everyone. Niche, whatever, where you come from in the world. But so, I mean, I think there's tons of people out there clamoring for various elements. And what I love is when I talk to you and a lot of other game developers, when people tell me they're all about their game, I'm like, man, I never would have thought about that. That's really cool. That sounds like it'd be really fun to play because, again, it's something that I, as a game player, don't think about. And so game designers like you are the creative ones who come up with things and make people scratch their heads going, man, I never even thought that would be a game, but it is. So
that's what I want. That's what I want developers for. That's what I want designers for, is to blow my mind. Like, take me on a journey, take me through an experience that I never would have thought possible. Like, that's what I want out of people. And like, no discredit to the bog standard of tabletop role-playing games. Like, I play D&D, sure. But a lot of the capacity to blow your mind about how new and different things can be are going to come from new games.
Sure.
I think as designers, we have an obligation to try and make our games easy to learn,
Yeah.
but as we can, well, as the system dictates too.
Sure.
But because you want to make things as approachable as possible, right?
Yeah.
You want to try and grease that slide so that people can easily go from, oh, that's interesting, to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to use things at the table in a way that's dynamic and easy and fun, so that they can just be having fun.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is the biggest. I mean, there are lots of barriers to adoption for games in general, whether it be time, money, desire, whatever.
Ability to convince your friends.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that's where solo games come in. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
and you're absolutely right. There is every board game that I have purchased. Just about every board game I've purchased for the last year has some sort of automa or some sort of one-player version of the game, so that way you can play by yourself. So it's a huge movement, and especially for those folks who can't get somewhere, or during COVID, it was a really big deal because you just had you typically, and if you wanted to play games, you'd have to play with yourself. I mean, that came out wrong, but you know what I mean. So there is a huge trend for solo gameplay, and I'm glad that you took something that was so well received and boiled it down to something that you can play on your own, and it still has that heart, and still has that, emotional tug, and makes you think about situations and why you're in them and why you're fighting. So,
Well,
bravo.
I'll just preface, I don't know if it's still a preface, but I'll just make the paratext around what you're saying, that people enjoy games in lots of different ways. And some
Mhm.
people enjoy games by playing them. And some people enjoy games by just having this fun thing that they get to look at and
Mhm.
be inspired by. And some people enjoy games by thinking about what it does and what it's presenting and talking about it with other people. And
Mhm.
all of those things are legitimate. And
Sure.
all solo games are doing are opening up the possibilities of what you can do as one person alone, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't know about you, I sometimes have a problem with discipline, with sitting down and doing one thing for a while, unless I'm getting hyper fixated on it. So I wanted to make a solo game where it would kind of carry you along a little bit. Like, you didn't need to be insanely focused. Like some of those old fighting fantasy games, you really needed to be keeping track of a lot of like bells and whistles in order to play them. And they were great, right? But it can be hard to focus, and it can be hard to create a sense of stake when it's just you and a book, right? Because you don't have somebody else exciting you. You don't have somebody else across the table being like, oh yeah, and then this happens, and then the surprise of it, and the reveal and the mystery. All of that has to be contained in text. So the book Solo Martial Blues has been very lovingly crafted to try and make a dialogue between you and the text, so that you feel like you're participating. So you feel a sense of stakes. So you feel like what you're going to do matters. Every page turn is changing your life in some way, your imagined life. And so it's fun. It was a fun project from a design perspective, and it's a really fun play experience. And I get to enjoy playing it myself, which is super cool because I don't get to play other people's games of Fight to Survive.
Right,
So-
right. Yeah, you're forever DM in that respect. So,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
GM.
Well, I was anyway, but yeah, like this way I get to actually play the game, and
Yeah.
I get a kick out of that.
That's awesome. Well, I will have all the links down below to the project, so you can take a look at it. You can go ahead and pledge to it. Again, it launches in February 5th.
February 1st, and it goes for the month.
Okay.
So it's in conjunction with Crowdfunder's Tabletop Nonstop event, where they're promoting a number of different tabletop projects. And it's running the whole month of February, which is kind of a doom and gloom month otherwise. So I'm trying to like pick it up with some excitement here. So it's Solo Martial Blues, one player, martial arts, action happening throughout February.
Well, perfect. James, I appreciate you coming on as always, and I expect to see you for all your projects for the rest of the year. And we will lovingly guide our viewers to you when they're looking for an awesome game to play.
Oh, sure, you're gonna get sick of me, but I'd love to talk about these things.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. Have a good night, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.